All right. Today we are opening up a cold case on one of the wildest, most controversial economic events in all of American history. We're talking about the Great Gold Confiscation of 1933. So let's start the investigation. Imagine this. You open your newspaper one morning and find out that the gold coins you have, maybe stashed away for a rainy day, are no longer legally yours. Well, that's exactly what happened on April 6, 1933. An executive order gave every single American just 26 days to turn in almost all of their gold. And if you didn't, you could face a $10,000 fine, we're talking hundreds of thousands in today's money, and up to 10 years in prison.
And that, right there, brings us to the big question. It's the one that has haunted gold owners for nearly a century. Could the government actually do something like that again? Well, to answer that, we've got to figure out what really went down back then, because it's not the story you'll find in most history books.
So, first up, we're going to compare the story the government told everyone with the one the actual financial data reveals. And trust me, they are two completely different tales.
The official narrative, the one pushed at the time, is pretty simple. The country was in a massive crisis, and patriotic Americans did their duty. They all lined up, they handed over their gold for paper money, and they helped save the nation from total financial collapse. It's a really nice story, but it's not what happened.
So when you dig into the forensic record, a totally different picture emerges. Work by the legendary economists Milton Friedman and Anna Schwartz shows that a shocking 75 to 80% of all the privately held gold in the country was never turned in. That's right, for every single ounce the government got its hands on, at least 3 more were kept hidden away.
Okay, so that begs the next big question, right? If the government knew that most people were just going to ignore the order, why even do it in the first place? What was the real game plan here?
You really have to put yourself back in that moment. It's 1933. The Great Depression is in its 4th, just brutal year. Thousands of banks have already failed, unemployment is through the roof, and the country's gold reserves are draining away. The whole financial system was literally hours away from just completely melting down. FDR had to do something drastic.
And this right here was the government's biggest headache, the gold standard. Back then, every single paper dollar was like a claim check, legally redeemable for a fixed amount of physical gold. So to fight the Depression, the government desperately needed to print more money and devalue the dollar. But they couldn't. Not as long as any citizen could just walk into a bank and demand gold at the old higher value. They had to break that connection. And this just brilliantly shows the government's whole financial play. They made citizens sell their gold for the official price of $20.67 an ounce. Then, just 9 months later, boom, they jacked up the official price to $35. The government instantly pocketed a 69% profit on the very gold it had just forced people to turn in. Now you'd think with these crazy threats, huge fines, 10 years in prison, that they'd be kicking down doors and arresting people left and right. But nope. The historical record shows that exactly one person, was ever prosecuted directly under this executive order. There were no door-to-door searches, no mass raids on safe deposit boxes. The government's enforcement was basically a bluff. They got their gold from the big guys, the banks and institutions they already controlled, not from you and me.
So if a whopping 80% of people managed to keep their gold, how in the world did they pull it off? Well, the evidence points to a pretty clear playbook.
It really came down to 4 main strategies. First, the order itself let everybody keep about 5 ounces of gold, so families just split up their holdings. Second, there was this giant loophole for rare coins, and what counted as rare was super vague. Third, you had the wealthy folks who just moved their gold to banks in places like Switzerland. And the fourth, and by far the most popular method, simply hiding it and saying absolutely nothing. The government had no way to track it down.
So all of this brings us back to our big central question. Now that we know what really happened in 1933, we can finally figure out if the same thing could ever happen today. And the short answer is, the world today is fundamentally different. I mean, look at this. In 1933, we were on a gold standard. Today, our currency is fiat, so the government has zero monetary reason to take your gold. The laws have totally changed, our constitutional protections are much stronger, and maybe most importantly, most gold is now held privately, not sitting in the banking system where the government can easily get it.
Let's get into the specific legal firewalls that exist today. A law passed in 1977 flat out removed the president's power to regulate gold during peacetime. And the modern Emergency Powers Act, well, it requires a foreign threat and only lets the government freeze assets, not outright seize them. And maybe the biggest one of all, the Fifth Amendment would now force the government to pay fair market value, which completely kills the profit motive they had back in 1933.
Now, this doesn't mean gold owners face zero risks today. It just means the risk isn't a 1933-style hand-over-your-gold situation. The modern threats are a lot more subtle, but believe me, they are real.
The key difference today all comes down to one word: visibility. Gold that's held in financial products like ETFs or sitting in an IRA, it's all tracked within the financial system. It's visible, and because of that, it's vulnerable to new rules and regulations. But physical gold, held privately, that's just like the gold hidden by farmers back in 1933. It's largely invisible to the system.
So what should a modern gold owner actually be thinking about? Well, it's not seizure. It's things like taxation. Congress could decide to raise the tax rate on gold profits. Or they could create new reporting requirements, making it harder to buy and sell without leaving a paper trail. And they could even enact capital controls, making it tough to move your gold out of the country. These are the real, plausible risks of the 21st century.
But in the end, the most powerful lesson from that whole 1933 heist wasn't written by the government. It was written by the 80% of Americans who defied it. And it's a simple, timeless principle. Whether the threat is seizure, or taxation, or regulation, the gold the government can find is the gold the government can take. And visibility, back then and right now, is a choice.